Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Auburn Undercover Podcast, live today on the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel and on the 24/7 Sports Network. Appreciate everyone that's already in the chat. Red is always here. Red working hard. He was the first one. He put in a comment like an hour ago that popped up in the chat. So appreciate everyone that's already here. Appreciate everyone that will be here. We'll hit y'all's questions. A lot of it will probably be based off this past weekend, the visitors that were here on campus. I'm sure everyone will want to know more about the defensive coordinator search as that continues to surge on. So we'll talk about all of that. Appreciate everyone for waiting a little bit as well. I actually got a bloody nose, so that managed to slow down our start. Little personal technical difficulties, I guess you could say.
Cold and dry usually can do that sometimes. So.
Yes, but we're good now. And speaking of good, there was a lot of good players. They were on Auburn's campus on Saturday. Not a lot, but they were really, really good. That's what I should say. It was an elite day. And I'm sure the first question that everyone is going to be asking about is about Julian Juju Lewis, the five-star quarterback out of Carrollton, Georgia. He was in the class of 2026. He had already been committed to USC since last year. He makes his way down to campus shortly after announcing that he will be reclassifying to the 2025 class. Gets on campus for a visit Saturday. I'm going to hit both of y'all, and we'll talk about this pretty extensively. But, Jason, you got a chance to talk with him. It was interesting because – you asked him, did this visit help Auburn, or, was this getting in the picture a little bit? And he was saying that, Auburn's already kind of been in the picture, which is, I don't want to say news to us, but he wasn't, he was in the 26 class, but it wasn't a quarterback that we were watching necessarily super closely. But this is one that Auburn has clearly been kind of working behind the scenes a little bit. And they get him on campus, and now he's obviously a big 2025 name to know at quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think the first thing is that, we've talked about momentum in recruiting and how important it is. Well, I think you look at when you start, people think you need a quarterback first to get wide receivers. Sometimes you need wide receivers to get a quarterback. And that's where this one may head for Auburn, whether it's Juju Lewis or KJ Lacey, whoever it is in 2025 class. The wide receiver class they just signed is going to have a major impact on Auburn's quarterback recruiting, in my opinion. It's basically, I believe, it's what got Juju Lewis on campus. He talked about it with, with one of our national guys earlier, and then he said the same thing, to me Saturday night. Said, look, that signing class, somebody's got to throw him the football, and I think that's a big part of things, and it's going to impact Auburn's quarterback recruiting. My guess is, Ed, we get through the spring, into the summer, and next fall when these guys start to kind of get on the field, I think you're going to start to see more and more young quarterbacks, and these guys go, okay, I'm going to go take a look at that place because that's the guys I want to throw to. And so I think that's going to have a major impact. Who knows? This one has shifted gears. They already committed, but in 26 class, and now 25, it's amped things up even more. He's going to have 10 or 15 of the best schools in the country to pick from when the time comes. And I think Auburn will get another visit. He said, his team's going to camp 7-on-7 again this summer. They did it last summer. The proximity will help Auburn, but obviously he's already committed. I don't think that's going to be a major factor for Juju Lewis when the time comes.
Yeah, Jason, you bring up a good point with the receivers. There's a quarterback out of California. His name is, I think it's TJ Lateef. And I was talking with another one of our national guys, Tom Loy, earlier today, and he was saying, look, Lateef is really high on Auburn, and a lot of it is because of those receivers. So that's definitely caught their attention. Dukes, I'm trying to remember what game it was this past fall. Might have been the Georgia game where Juju Lewis visited. And I don't even know how I still remember this, but we were doing a podcast the week after that game. I think it was the Georgia game. And I asked y'all, who do you think Auburn made a move with this past weekend? And you said Juju Lewis, just in the sense that they kind of caught his eye a little bit, which stuck with me. And so once his name popped back up again, that was something that I instantly I thought about and remembered.
Oh, yeah. So with Juju, so Juju is another one of those kids that played in the Atlanta Ducks system, which you probably heard me talk about a lot over the past couple of years, but the majority of the really good kids in the Atlanta area all played in this system, and they are really, really like kind of close knit when it comes to their recruitments. So KJ Bolden's dad and Julian's dad, Juju's dad, TC. They have a really good relationship. And so as they were the thing about when you recruit those big time, those 5-star guys who everybody's after is they all talk. And when Auburn began to make that move with KJ, Juju was paying attention. When they began to make that move with Caleb Odom, Juju was paying attention. So by being able to get him on campus and starting to really get that dialogue to start that dialogue to be more consistent, where it didn't feel like, pie in the sky, like, I could really see myself here. So getting another unofficial early, I think is really important. And as he reclassed, you got to think about it. What Auburn is going to sell is they're going to be a run-first offense with the ability to get vertical and to put the quarterback in the best situation as possible. And if you're a young quarterback who you look at Juju, you're not seeing the classic 6'6" or 6'5", 6'4" quarterback. You're seeing somebody who's going to need to be able to have the run to throw off of. With him at his height, you want to be able to have those passing lanes open due to the run. And I think that's going to be huge for Auburn. So do I think Auburn is really in it for Juju Lewis at this point? Absolutely. But who's not? I mean, any school that has that has NIL, any school that has resources, any school that has facilities, they're going to be in it for Juju as long as they as long as they recruit competitively. And I think that you're going to see Auburn, you're going to see Georgia. I wouldn't be surprised to see another visit to Alabama once they get it going. You're going to see every pretty much major school in the Southeast region take a swing, but I do think that Auburn's going to be one of those top 5 schools for Juju in the end.
Well, and he's going elsewhere too. He's obviously committed to USC, but he's visiting Colorado this upcoming weekend, I believe. So, look, he's one of the best quarterbacks that I've seen in person. He was really, really young when I saw him in person, so that's saying a lot. This is a guy that people have talked about for a really long time and for good reason. So Auburn's throwing its hat in the ring a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how they balance the dynamic of recruiting KJ Lacey and recruiting Juju Lewis. Obviously, KJ Lacey being teammates with Ryan Williams down there at Saraland. Jason, I'll just be interested to see how they balance that. I really do not think, if KJ Lacey called them tomorrow on Tuesday, I don't think there's a chance at all they would say no. I think they would say if he said he wants in on Tuesday, he'd probably be in. I don't think they would necessarily wait for Juju Lewis, despite the fact that he is ranked higher and maybe a little bit more advanced as a quarterback right now. But I think there's a lot of people at Auburn that really, really value KJ Lacey highly as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those where you go, hey, here's a group of guys that, and I think it's probably a good point to kind of mention a little bit. There's guys you go, okay, that we're going to take that guy no matter what. There's other guys who go, hey, probably going to wait and let's see what these other guys do first. Other guys go, hey, this one maybe towards the end. I think KJ Lacey is one of the guys for Auburn. You go, hey, if that guy's ready to come right now, you probably go, hey, let's roll. We'll take that as a 25 quarterback. So, it's going to be interesting to see how quickly. They've done a lot of stuff on that defensive line. Can you start to fill out this 2025 class and start to move forward in a lot of other areas? Quarterback's obviously going to be one of those, but depending on how this spring goes and what early season looks like and transfer potential, do you have one quarterback in the 2025 class? Do you have a high school guy, potentially a transfer, depending on how the roster shakes up? That's the crazy part about it. I think we know they're going to take a 25 quarterback and from the high school ranks. The days of taking 2 high school quarterbacks, though, probably over with. I don't know that
really
anybody.
Tough.
Now you're going to go 1 high school quarterback, probably a portal guy if you want a second one. That's just the way it works. So it changes the dynamic of quarterback recruiting for sure.
Moving on a little bit to some of the other visitors. Here's a question from Troy. He said, I'm more concerned with Caleb Cunningham, the 5-star wide receiver who was on campus this past weekend, Zayden Walker and Naim Offord. Unfortunately for you, Troy, I do not think there is much traction at all with Zayden Walker as of right now. He released like a top 7 and didn't even put Auburn in it recently. Now that it's January and it goes all the way until December, I'm sure Auburn will keep fighting there, but not a ton of traction. As for Naim Offord, he has not visited quite yet. He's been busy. He was going to visit, or his teammate Jordan Crawford, who's committed, was going to visit, but wanted to wait until Naim could come. Auburn was up in Birmingham earlier today. Let's see. I'm trying to think. It was Hugh Freeze, Charles Kelly, Coach Crime, and Jeremy Garrett. I believe was the group that was up in Birmingham that went to step-by-step training with Coach L, where Naim Offord and some of these other guys train, and then went to Parker High School as well to see them. So Auburn went to go see those guys today. And then, like I said, Caleb Cunningham was on campus on Saturday. And I think Auburn he's only been to campus once before. I think they made a pretty big impact here. I don't think they're necessarily the leader in the clubhouse right now, but man, they made it interesting. And Marcus Davis has obviously been huge the whole time. And now the addition of Derek Nix really, really helps Auburn there as well.
I agree. And boy, just, we got a chance to speak with him some and talk to him, and just a super kid, first of all, a guy that
super nice.
I mean, that guy would be a great addition no matter where he winds up. Really good football player. I think one of those guys when you talk to him, you go, yep, that feels like a fit. Now, whether Auburn was able to land him or not, I don't know, but it feels like a fit from an Auburn perspective. And so definitely got to watch, pay attention to. And again, how this offense looks, how it develops will be important for a guy like that moving forward.
Dukes, and it's kind of the same thing as Derek Smith visited last weekend. And Derek Smith talked about, look, they just signed some wide receivers, and I almost want to commit because of them. And it's what we've been talking about with the 24 class. These 25 guys are the same way. Look at 2026. You got Denarius Gray committed already. Caleb Cunningham is the same way, Dukes. He was talking about, look, I might want to commit. I might want to come play with these guys.
Yeah, it's always important to have guys who are, how do I want to put it? If you got guys want to be around, it just makes sense, right? Like, I don't like, even me as a writer, I want to be around people who go crazy, right? So me finding out that I could work with Chris Clemente, Philip Marshall, and Jason Caldwell, I was psyched. I was like, oh yeah, I gotta go here. And I think it's real important. And the same thing with football. Like, dogs want to play with dogs. Marcus Davis is a dog. Like, if you go back and look at his playing career, he recruits the same way he played. He literally gets up early. He's the first guy there, last guy to leave. A lot of people did not, when he was hired, nobody was thinking like, oh my God, we got an ace recruiter. But just hearing how he blew through Atlanta last week, the schools that he was at, everybody was super impressed. The guys that I talked to trainers, I talked to, like, there were stops that he made. I was like, you saw who today? Like, there? Like, Marcus Davis was getting around. So I think with Caleb Cunningham, going into Mississippi and getting a wide receiver is going to be tough, right? Especially one this good. You got Mississippi State, and they're going to throw the ball around a ton with, I think, did Mississippi State get Levy?
Yep. Yeah, and they're perceived as the leader right now for him.
Yeah, so, State, it's going to be hard to get him away from there. You got Lane Kiffin, who's, like, he literally, like, wakes up some days and is like, you know what, I got to go get the number one player in Mississippi regardless. So, it's going to be tough, but I think Auburn is up to the challenge. And I think with the room that they're putting together, when you see a Cam Coleman, you see a Perry Thompson, possibly a Ryan Williams. Let's not even talk Ryan Williams. Let's say just the 4 guys that they signed this year. That was a hell of a class. I mean, like, probably the best we've ever seen in Auburn history. As far as just potential and recruiting rankings, I can't think of another one that would be that high. So, yeah, I think when you start to normalize Auburn as a wide receiver school, you're going to have more people pop in and say, you know what, I could see myself here. And I think the Caleb Cunningham situation is no different.
Yeah, you want to talk about good kids. Devin Williams out of Buford. For the record, every recruit that we talked to on Saturday, pretty much every recruit we ever come across is fantastic. But Caleb was really, really good. Devin Williams was just fantastic. Ended up not being able to catch him, but talked to him on the phone. And I tweeted out one of his quotes and screenshotted it because it was a longer quote, but it was so good. And it was him talking about Hugh Freeze, and Hugh Freeze talking about how, look, he doesn't want to go to the portal to go replace guys. And you've already kind of seen that with, in 2023, they had to hit the portal and they brought in a bunch of guys. This year, they just went out and got a couple pieces. I think they have 9 new portal additions. Honestly, I think next year you could go from 20 to 9 and 9 to maybe 6 or 7. You keep trimming that down a little bit. But Devin Williams was really, really insightful. If you're not over at auburnundercover.com, I would really, really highly recommend going over there to read that. I think today is the last day to get 60% off an annual sub, so you can still do that and join us over there. Read the interview with Devin Williams. He talked about Coach Crime quite a bit. Jason, that's been a common theme, and we'll talk about Zealous Hicks in the show as well. They both talked about Coach Crime. They both talked about Coach Kelly. This is a top 247 guy, top 100 in the rankings. And Auburn has always kind of been in it, but I think Auburn made a pretty big move on Saturday, which is telling too, because he was not there the full day. He's like, look, I had to leave a little bit early because I had a banquet, but he's like, man, I really wish I could have stayed longer.
Yeah, no, it's you think about secondary recruiting, it's going to be really interesting when you think about those two dynamic, prolific recruiters in Weston McGriff and Charles Kelly. And you think about the opportunities in this secondary. Now they're going to have some young guys on campus, and depending on how those guys go, it'll impact how recruiting goes. But there's also a few older players that you think about that will have to be replaced. So it's an older group and then a really young group. And so there'll be some guys that get some experience this year. But a talented player really is, and obviously one of the best programs.
It's really fast.
Yeah, and a program that Auburn has recruited. Everybody recruited this year. Everybody recruits every year. That's the thing is these guys that you've known about for a couple of years. And so, and I think that's the key now for Auburn is they're able to get ahead of the game a little bit. So last year you're playing catch up, trying to figure out who you're recruiting in 25. Now you've had a chance to establish some relationships with these guys, and now you can move forward with it. But, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing really how this class shapes up. But I think Auburn's going to be there with some of the top players in the country, just like they were this last cycle. A lot of those guys. I think from the final rankings today, I think Auburn was 6th in average star rating. So you're talking about the average ranking for your player in terms of number. Auburn was 6th nationally. So that's pretty darn strong for 12, 13 months, and the potential to add another one of those guys. If you were to get a guy like Ryan Williams, then that bumps you up a little bit. So, but yeah, no, just again another guy. It was great to get on campus.
Jason, you talked about getting ahead early. We've already seen Auburn get 2 2026 commitments, and then Dukes this weekend. They had Zeke Hicks on campus. He's been on campus, I think he said 3 times for games over the course of the fall. He was teammates with Jalen Crawford out of Parkview High School. Zealous is now going to spend his next 2 years of high school and close things out at Carrollton, so he'll be teammates with Juju Lewis. But he's a 5-star safety. He's actually being recruited primarily by Coach Crime. They already had that relationship, so that's kind of continued. And he said, look, I couldn't believe that Crime came back after 1 week at Texas A&M, but that was really, really big. And he said that Auburn is kind of top 3, top 5 for him. So he's not in a rush. But Dukes, just your kind of thoughts on Zeke Hicks and making a splash there early a little bit in 2026.
Yeah, Zealous is another one of those kids who was kind of legendary in the little league circuit in Atlanta, youth football. I gotta stop saying little league, the youth football circuit. But man, he's a dynamic player. Man, he will come up and smack you. He's one of those really athletic players. Explodes. I'm not sure if you guys saw his dad, but his dad is pretty put together. Looks like a personal trainer. Yeah,
I think so. But even just seeing Zealous, you can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so earlier last year, when Auburn started to make strides with Jalen Crawford, actually we talked to we talked to his dad in at Under Armour camp at Carrollton last year, and his dad was like he didn't know as much as he wanted to know about Auburn, but they had been making contact. But he really wanted, that was one of the schools that he wanted to see based on the proximity. And from then to now, the last time I talked to him, he was just like, "No, Auburn's in it." And one of the reasons is he wants to be close, and then 2, like you said, Coach McGriff. Coach McGriff has one of those uncle type vibes where if you want somebody who's going to take care of your kid, and what we call it a lot of times around here is you want somebody who's going to put their arm around you. And when that becomes important to a player and a family, I don't think there's anybody better in the game than Wesley McGriff as being one of those guys who can hold you accountable, put your arm around you, and teach you more about football and kind of teach you about life. And I think that's going to be really important to the Hicks family. And I think that's one of the reasons that Auburn has kind of shot past a lot of schools who at the beginning, Auburn wasn't even in it. Now, mind you, he is a 26. He's a rising junior. But for a player like this is the type of stuff that you wanted to see in the past as far as when you have those blue chip recruits, Auburn starting early. Like we talk about all the ballyhoo about KJ Bolden, But what if Auburn started recruiting him when he was a junior? I mean, a sophomore instead of waiting until last year. Things may have been different. So I think getting ahead of this on a kid who's probably going to be he has a really good shot to be the top safety in the country when it's his time as a senior. So I think, this is a really huge move for Auburn to start to get in on the 26th class earlier, and I think it'll pay dividends.
We're going to touch on two of the last main visitors, and then we'll hit some of y'all's questions. I know there's a bunch of questions about the defensive coordinator search. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube already, definitely make sure to do that down below. Totally free, does not cost you anything. We are making the push for 10K, and we're going to talk about Micah Dubos now. Jason, one of the best offensive linemen in the country, previously committed to Georgia from Viger. This is a kid that you've known for a long time, really since I think as a freshman, and he continues to look just as good. Now he's not committed to Georgia, and now it feels like Auburn is really, really, really in the picture.
Yeah, I saw Micah the first time as a freshman in a state championship game. Viger won a state championship when he was a freshman, and since that time he's just continued to get to blow up more and more. And Dukes, you just said it again, but it's the same situation. I would say second verse, but it's about the 50th verse of a guy that when this staff got here, they're behind the 8 ball for a kid that's in a 2025 class in their own state because Auburn didn't recruit him hard enough early on. That was the case for Micah. Now Auburn's made up a lot of ground. He decommitted, been back to campus a couple of times for games last year. That's where that picture's from. Back this past weekend, he is part of an unbelievably good 2025 offensive line class within 250 miles of Auburn. There's a lot of good offensive linemen, and this is the class that they've been pointing to. He's one of the guys that they've been pointing to. Looking at Micah Dubos, it gives me Avery Young vibes a little bit, where I think about this guy can play right tackle, could probably play right guard. He's just a big physical guy. Gives me those kind of vibes going, look, no matter where, he's going to be able to play, and he's going to play somewhere and play it well. And so Auburn continues to make an impact there, make a push there. I think Auburn is right there, and that's a place in Mobile that last couple of years Auburn start to make a little bit more inroads again, and there's some really good players in Mobile, not only this year but the next couple of years at 2026 class as well. So continuing to kind of bring those guys along. Obviously, still waiting on Ryan Williams, but you just added a couple wide receivers from down there. Think about this class and another offensive lineman across the way at Williamson playing for Antonio Coleman. You have Antonio Coleman committed in 2025. That Mobile now is, for a while you went, a few players here or there. Now Mobile once again is becoming the place where you better have some guys. And I think Auburn is obviously hitting that hard with Marcus and Charles Kelly and those guys going that way.
Last visitor that we're going to touch on real quick is Cameron Sparks. And this kind of actually goes to someone's question in the chat from David. He said, do you guys know at this point kind of, or at least have decent guesses for who Auburn is targeting at the top of their board for each position? Honestly, Auburn set up its 2025 board pretty well enough to the point we do at least have a good idea of kind of how things are shaping up. This is one we didn't necessarily have a good idea of. This guy is number 40 in the country, something like that, in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Really highly ranked as an athlete, recruited by most schools as a wide receiver, but recruited by Auburn as a hybrid tight end. Actually, he's every bit of 6'3", 210, maybe even a little more than 210 as of right now. You get up close to him, and he fills out really well, and they think he could be a Rivaldo Fairweather type guy. This was one that didn't know a whole lot about going into the visit. Still want to learn more about where Auburn sits here, but they definitely it's one of the tight ends to keep an eye on. You obviously already have Ryan G committed, but you get Cameron Sparks on campus. You've been recruiting Ethan Barbour out of Alpharetta. You've been recruiting Hollis Davidson out of Peachtree City, maybe somewhere else in Georgia. You've been recruiting a ton of other tight ends as you look to add a second. Shoot, maybe they'll add a third tight end in 2025 if it's a guy like this, like a Cameron Sparks, who's really a true hybrid between wide receiver and tight end. So that'll be interesting to see. That's it for the visitors in terms of the guys that we were going to talk about. Of course, what everyone wants to know, the defensive coordinator search. We'll pick Jonathan's question here. DJ Durkin or Chris Kiffin, DC, or has another name emerged? Jason, you had an update for Auburn Undercover subscribers earlier today. So if you're not a sub, you missed out on that hours ago, but just give people that are watching and people that are listening later a little bit of a note on what you had to say.
Yeah, I think it's, I wrote about it this morning early. We've been mentioning it really since early last week that the two names that it looked like for us were Chris Kiffin and DJ Durkin. I don't think that's changed. I still think those are the two guys that are kind of the more focus on right now. As I said, could somebody slip in there and absolutely come out of the blue? Yeah, it could happen. But I still think these are the two guys I would lean towards being one of. And for a while it felt like DJ Durkin might be ahead. Now it feels like Chris Kiffin, maybe a guy that's a little bit in the lead. I do think that we'll have something here before the end of the week. We've said all along, this one's a little bit different. Hey, would it be great to have your guy day one? Absolutely. Is it as necessary now? I mean, they're not recruiting anybody in this 2024 class for a February from the high school ranks. The portal pretty much is done. The important thing now is go get the right guy. Go get the guy that you feel like is the right fit, not only defensively, schematically, but personality, everything involved. And so I think they're taking their time with this one. They got their guys on offense. That's because of those things. They already knew Derek Nix. They knew what he brought to the table from a scheme standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, from a personality standpoint. That's what they're looking for. Now you're going to get some guys that you're familiar with, but maybe not as familiar with. So you're going to kind of make sure you get it right. And I think that's what they've done. So I would say here in the next 48 hours or so, we should have an idea of who it's going to be. But I still lean towards those two guys.
Hopefully in the next 48 hours. Otherwise, the board might have a meltdown, even though the timing of it is not necessarily all that important.
Correct.
But
it's not like it was in past years where you're heading towards a signing class in 2 weeks and you're still recruiting 12 guys. That's not the case any longer.
Someone in the chat, I can't find it now. Someone said, let's just take both quarterbacks in 2025, as in Juju Lewis and KJ Lacey. I'm sure Auburn would love that if that was possible.
If you can do that, you'd probably go ahead and do that and see what happens. Yes.
I don't think that's very realistic, though, unfortunately. We'll hit a couple rapid-fire questions. Here's one from Corey. Do we take Zion Grady and call it a day on the 25 D-line class? No, actually, because Zion Grady is more of an edge guy. They like Andrew Maddox, who visited last weekend. He's the main true defensive line target that's still remaining, which would give them 5 commitments there. Then you start to fill out the edges. Then you look at the Zion Gradys. You look at the CJ May, the Jared Smith, some of those guys. You look at some of those guys. And so we'll see. But Zion Grady mostly being recruited as an edge. So he's a D lineman, but that would not be part of Jeremy Garrett's defensive line class necessarily. Here's one. Is Alvin Henderson still looking at Auburn after losing Cadillac? Well, we know that Hugh Freeze went by Elba earlier today. I believe Charles Kelly went there as well. I would be willing to guess that Derek Nix was there as well, but I don't know that for certain. We're going based off what someone at Elba tweeted, and they tagged Hugh Freeze and Charles Kelly. So Auburn is still pursuing him. Another name that we learned about a little bit more this weekend is Akalin. I don't know how to pronounce his first name. Akalin, I think it is Deer from Mississippi. That's a guy that Derek Nix recruited out of Ole Miss. Talking with some folks at Auburn, there was a chance that he was going to visit on Saturday. Wasn't able to make it, but that will definitely be a running back to know. And as we've talked about pretty extensively, it looks like it'll be a 2 running back class in 2025, especially after you didn't take one in 2024. So Alvin Henderson, wait and see a little bit, but definitely does feel like there's still interest there, mutual interest. Question from Corey again. Who's the D-line from Florida we have committed but didn't sign in December? Dimitri Nicholas out of Norland, I think. Yes, and Auburn has his commitment. Remains to be seen whether or not Auburn takes his signature in February. And I think that's still up in the air a little bit. But we will wait and kind of see on that. Look for a couple more questions here, maybe to close it out. Here's one from Red that all of us can talk about real quickly. Maybe we can close it out on this because we always have to talk about Ryan Williams, of course. How close is the Ryan Williams decision on February 9th? Look, right now, I think everyone is in it. I think that includes Alabama, where he just was this past weekend. If I had to pick someone that's in last, I'd probably say Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is the only one that I don't view as a threat. I think Auburn is a threat. I think Texas is a threat. I think Alabama is a threat. Texas A&M maybe is. I just don't view them as a huge threat.
Yeah, the thing we've said, and I'm 100% convinced is correct, is that I think the average fan thought when Nick Saban retired that it opened up the door for Auburn, when in reality, when Nick Saban retired, it made this a much tougher battle for Auburn because it was a two-team race. Pretty much everybody else had said, "No, we're not going to be able to battle those two teams." But now, when it's now, Alabama's still in it, but it changed the dynamics, and all of a sudden, if Texas was fighting, they're like, now everybody's in it, and you're right. I think it made it a much tougher battle because now it's 4 or 5 instead of just head to head and see what happens.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think with the coaching movement, like his wide receiver coach going to Texas A&M, Charles Kelly coming to Auburn, just some of the movement that was going on. I think the Williams family did have to reevaluate. You got T-Rob going to Georgia. I definitely think Georgia's going to try to sneak in there. I've seen weirder things happen in recruiting. So did he schedule? Did he put that on Georgia on his visit list?
He is not yet, but I'm with you. Ever since T-Rob got hired there, I've had Georgia circled.
Right. So, and then I was at a Georgia game this year, and nobody was expecting Ryan to be there, and I saw him. I was like, "Oh, dang, that's Ryan Williams!" Like, so, like, what's he doing here? And so now he has some familiarity there. I do think offense and scheme is going to have a major impact on what Ryan does. He didn't reclassify not to play. He's going in looking to play. I think he's done everything that he can do on a high school level, and I think that he wants to come in and make an impact day one, and he wants to be in a system where he can get the ball. So I think that where he sees the best fit is where he'll end up. I think Auburn has a really good shot, but I also I wouldn't count out either Texas school, and I also think Alabama. And if you think about it, if you look at what those wide receivers did in Grubb's offense in Washington last year, and how he developed some of those guys, the way they get the ball out quickly, I think those factors really do complement Ryan's game well. So we'll see what happens.
Yep, we'll keep tracking it over at auburnundercover.com. We'll hit a couple really quick questions here. Question from Troy: does Kiffin have any recruiting experience? He absolutely does. He has some really, really, really big recruiting wins. If you search up Chris Kiffin and then 247, it'll lead you to his kind of coach profile, and you can look at his all-time recruiting wins. He was the primary recruiter for Laramie Tunsil. He was involved with, who was the number 1 player in the country that Ole Miss got out of Grayson? What was his name, the defensive end?
Robert Kimdichie.
Yes. He was the secondary recruiter there. Coach Crime was the primary recruiter, actually. Mm-hmm. But Kiffin definitely has recruiting experience. Any other questions that we need to hit on that are good? Someone says, I still think Auburn getting the last visit really matters for Ryan Williams. I would agree with that because I think this will go all the way till February 9th before he actually makes a decision in his mind. And so if you're able to get that last impact, then that'll be important. I think we'll wrap it up there, unless there's any parting thoughts. Or do you all have any parting thoughts or anything that we missed on?
I don't think so. I think it's when you think about now, I think it's kind of figuring out the pieces you have. And as Hugh said, the interesting thing for me is going to see how they change or if they change what they're doing. Because, portal, you're right, they're not going to need as many guys from the portal. At least they're not right now, but you never know what it looks like 6 months or a year from now. It can change. I think the thing you have to be right now as a college football staff is flexible because it's going to change. Your board's going to change. And, we saw them last year. Flexible and take some guys, move some guys around in a class. And I think that's what you have to be willing to do. So I think that's the key for me is seeing how this board maybe changes, how it changes in the next 3 weeks, how it changes in the next 3 months, because it's going to change. And like we said, somebody that's on the top of the board right now may not be on the board at all. And there would be somebody that might not be on the board, period, right now, that may be on the top of the board in 3 months. That's the way this thing can change.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Jason was saying, if you look at Amaris Williams, where he's ranked now, and 3-4 months ago, I mean, people were going to just absolutely have a conniption if you didn't get Kamarion Franklin. And now Kamarion Franklin ends up, I think, did he finish in the top 100?
I think he's like 120. So no, I think I'll look it up, but you keep going.
Yeah, but so you look at what people wanted at the time, and now you got one of the top defensive line prospects in Amaris Williams, edge defensive line, whatever he wants to be. When you bring in top 30 guys, we're talking about 30, like not a top 100, not a top 300. When you bring in top 30 guys, it makes your program better as a whole. And secondly, nobody saw that coming. This time last year, nobody was even remotely thinking about it. As late as August, nobody was thinking about this player. So
probably later than that.
Yeah. I mean, it popped up over the last like month.
Yeah.
Right.
Andrew Ivins, I looked and he updated Amaris and his kind of evaluation thing for him January the 6th. So while we're in San Antonio, and his player profile is Melvin Ingram, and that's pretty darn good. Similar type player. Amaris, he's already here, and you look at him and you go, what he can be in 8 months of being on campus and having the strength and conditioning program. I think he's a guy that's going to play at 265 or 270 as a defensive end and give you that extra. I could see him being on the field on third downs as pass rusher. I could really see him going, all right, that guy's a third down defensive end. You have your jack linebacker as a pass rusher. And then inside you go, well, let's move Keldrick Falk inside. And all of a sudden you go, got 4 dudes that can get upfield in a hurry. I think he can be that type of guy that has that impact.
Yeah, so we will wrap it up there. This is a great comment to end it on. If we see Lane angry tweeting about his brother, then we know who the DC is. It's absolutely right.
Probably give it away, yes.
Yes, so keep an eye at auburnundercover.com and keep an eye on Lane Kiffin's Twitter for the defensive coordinator search. But we'll wrap it up there. Appreciate everyone that tuned in. Really appreciate everyone that's listening. This is a podcast later on as well. If you are here on YouTube, definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel as we make the push for 10K. Appreciate everyone that was in the chat. Appreciate everyone asking questions. A little bit of a shorter show today, but weren't necessarily a ton of guys that were on campus this past weekend. Really good guys, but not necessarily a ton of them, which was good. Gave the guys a lot of one-on-one time with the coaches. I mean, they weren't being hosted by recruiting guys. They weren't being hosted by personnel people or anything like that. They were being hosted by Marcus Davis, by Jake Thornton, whoever it may have been. So that was good for them to get personal time. We broke it all down. Appreciate everyone tuning in. We will catch you guys again next week. I think we might try and do a show with Cooper Patagna as well from our rankings team. Break down the 2024 class a little bit, start talking 2025. So maybe we'll do that later this week. Maybe we'll do that next week. We'll have that, and we'll, of course, have our regular live show as well. So we'll catch you guys then, and see you soon.